Welcome back to another edition of the Disney Dish Podcast with Jim Hill. It's me, Len Testa, and this is our show for the week of Schmurz Day, February 9th, 2026. On the show today, so much news, plus listener questions and surveys. Then in our main segment, Jim takes a look back at the role Universal Studios played in Dinosaur, the ride, getting built at Disney's Animal Kingdom. Let's get started by bringing in the man who's going to stand outside a fancy restaurant on Valentine's Day and yell, "Well, you moved on pretty quick," to random couples going inside. It's Mr. Jim Hill. Jim, how's it going?
It's going well, Len. But I wanted to take a moment here to pop the hood on the actual Saint Valentine, the really fertile guy behind all those heart-shaped boxes of chocolate. And full name, Len, was Valentine of Tierney, a clergyman in the 3rd century, who ministered to persecuted Christians, which unfortunately brought him to the attention of officials high up in the Roman Empire, which is why he wound up being martyred. Jump ahead to the 8th century. This is when Valentine of Tierney gets elevated to sainthood. And by the way, this is when the feast of Saint Valentine gets started. Len, a feast, an actual feast.
That explains the dinner component of dating. Yeah.
It does. But if you think about how many of us are, we don't get the dinner. We get what? If we're lucky, a box of Whitmans and a card. But back in the 8th century, full day of feasting. It's like we need to bring this back.
To be fair, Jim, it did take 500 years for that feast to come around, so we've got some time.
Well, all right, you're not wrong. Okay, by the way, worth noting here, St. Valentine is not just the patron saint of love. He's also, you're going to enjoy this, Len, he's the patron saint of logistics. Likewise, the patron saint of beekeepers, which that last one.
I can see the logistics and Valentine's Day thing, but maybe he's your honey? I don't know.
I was thinking people.
All right, there's a joke in there somewhere.
That stung by Cupid, something like that. But
there you go.
All right, just to close this out, folks. And again, Nancy and I have been together 29 years this September, and Len, I'm speaking honestly here. At this point in our relationship, I am running out of ideas for appropriate Valentine's Day gifts, and I'm thinking that this coming Saturday, if I turn to Nancy and say, "Hey, I changed the oil in your car," that's not good.
That works.
Yeah, is it?
100%.
Oh,
yeah.
wow. Okay,
yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. Fill up the car with gas, get it washed, and maybe an oil change or, whatever the maintenance stuff. Yeah, 100%.
Wow. Okay, cool. Boy, that's a relatively easy.
See, Jim, you're a romantic and you don't even know it. That's the thing.
I did not know. Cool. Okay.
There you are. All right, Jim, let's do a quick shout out to our subscribers. Thanks to everyone who subscribes to the show over at patreon.com/JimHillMedia, including Mike Rafferty, Moody Kim, Pat Merzick, Patty Kiernan, hey Patty, Professor Andrew, hey Andrew, and Scott Atwood, hey Scott. Jim, these are Josh D'Amaro's executive directors, tasked with fulfilling the new CEO's promise to put more classic elements in Disney theme parks. Look for the return of ticket books, Pal Mickey, the Pecos Bills Fixin' Bar, and the Handwich starting in summer 2026. True story.
Oh, the Handwich, really? Boy, I missed my wrist smelling like tuna. Just cool. Yes, let's go with that.
Yeah, that's what you want. You want tuna scented mayo dripping on your shorts as you walk around Central Florida in July. That's exactly right. On to the news, folks. The Disney Dish News is sponsored by UnlockedMagic.com from our friends at DVCRentalStore.com. Would it improve your mood to see Tinkerbell ziplining into a wall in Tomorrowland? Then visit our friends at UnlockedMagic.com for discounted theme park tickets that will get you that serotonin boost you desperately need. Their ticket prices are better than Disney's, so visit UnlockedMagic.com now and start planning your next fairy tale adventure. On to the news. All right, Jim. Josh D'Amaro named the next Disney CEO, replacing Bob Iger. That wasn't much of a surprise, was it? No. But I'm glad it's done now.
No. I mean, and more to the point, I guess a lot of us who were concerned about the Dana Walden component of this.
Literally the second bullet point in the show notes. Go ahead.
No, that Dana Walden, who was also in the running for this role,
right,
wound up as Disney president and chief creative officer. And
chief creative.
I got to say, for a lot of us, it's like, okay, cool. Sigh of relief, because the worry was that Dana, if she didn't get the top job, would leave the company. And it just sort of like, She is, there are so many people in the entertainment industry, from Kelly Ripa on down, who loved Dana, and if she,
Who love Dana? Yeah. So Dana's background is, I think, linear TV, right?
there
But
we
now
go.
she's over,
hmm
she's on that side of the business right now. But yeah, to your point, well regarded by almost everyone. Yeah. So that would have been a loss.
And that's the thing, that when you look at something like, for example, Grey's Anatomy, Len, which, by the way, did you see the stat last week where, of the things that are watched on streaming,
Mhm.
Bluey is number one with like 400 billion minutes of hours of minutes of television being watched, but number two is Grey's Anatomy, and that's
Yeah.
largely because of the 450 episodes, which, by the way, is something that Dana helped keep on the air all of these years. So, again, Dana's been a big part of some very long running successes at Disney. So it's like, I mean, great that
Yeah.
Josh is in, up front, but at the same time, okay, cool. We also found a way to keep Dana.
Yeah, I think that's Disney's triangulated that really, really well. Dana's very well regarded.
hmm
She was in the running for a CEO.
hmm
Jim, does the chief creative officer role include Imagineering reporting?
Okay.
Does Imagineering report to Parks or does it report to the new CCO? I thought it was the new CCO.
See, this is where this gets interesting because, face it, Josh has come out of Parks, all right, and now
Right.
now he's in charge of the company as a whole. But at the same time, if you think about it, this $60 billion worth of stuff that's happening, cruise lines, parks, all the way around the barn, Josh put that in motion.
Right.
So it's going to be interesting, even with a Dana in the chief creative officer position, to the
Mhm.
notion of, I think this is a Disney CEO who he's going to be very much in the Michael Eisner mold of,
Mm.
very, very, very hands-on when it comes to the parks.
I like the idea that Imagineering reports to a chief creative officer who's essentially the number two in the company. We all know that the accountants, the finance people, have tremendous influence within Disney with respect to the parks and resorts. Balancing that out somewhat with creatives, especially at that high level, I think can only be good for us. But yeah, I mean, I'm excited to see what Josh does here. The new era for a Disney CEO that only comes along, once a generation. So this is super interesting to see. Yeah, wish him all the luck in the world. Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So Jim, the next big question is who's replacing Josh at Parks and Experiences? Because that is going to be a major announcement. So right now, Jeff Vale is the current president of Walt Disney World. Thomas Maslin is the president of Disneyland, and Joe Schott is the president of Experiences, which includes DCL and DVC. Jeff is 62, Thomas is 58, Joe is 62. It seems to me like I'm going to go out on a limb here. That's a little old to be in the running for Parks and Experiences going forward. Like they're old enough now that their next promotion would probably be their last.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong.
So so I don't think any of those three is going to be the next Parks and Experiences president.
Well, also, let's be honest here. If you think, for example, like in just the next month or two, we have Disney Adventure World, debuting at,
Mhm.
the rebranding of Walt Disney Studios Park in Paris. We have the Dubai project.
Right.
I'm going to be intrigued to see, if who winds up in charge of parks and experiences comes out of the international side of Disney rather than somebody who's had most of their experience stateside. I think you're not wrong about, Josh is going to look at, what he's put in motion at Disney. And I think also the very thing you hit upon, the three gentlemen you just mentioned, are sadly a little long in the tooth, and might be looking for somebody who's going to be there for the next 5-10 years at Disney as these long-term projects go forward.
That's what I'm thinking. I mean, I think the next president would be there, like, somewhere between 5 and 8 years. So you'd want somebody who's a little bit younger.
Mhm.
But yeah, to your point, they also need parks experience. So that's going to be And they'd need to be in like a VP or president role
There we go.
already somewhere within the parks or an equivalent area within the experiences side. We'll see.
Okay.
All right, Jim, the other big piece of news last week was the Disney earnings call. Parks and experiences earnings hit $10 billion. Per cap spending was up 4%. Domestic park attendance was up 1% versus 2024. I will note, as did Disney, that the 2024 year was affected for a few days by Hurricane Milton. So domestic park attendance in 2025 was likely flat or down slightly if you account for that. Hotel occupancy was up 2% to 87%, which again is an enviable number for anyone in the lodging industry. That is a fantastic, fantastic number.
Okay. But at the same time, if we're being honest here, again, even Disney stepped in and admitted, if you factor in Hurricane Milton, attendance was probably flat.
Yeah.
And let's look ahead to the next year or so. What's opening at the parks to get people to come?
Well, that's interesting because in the comments part of the earnings call, they gave us some future guidance on the second and third quarters of 2026 would be the next 6 months. They did mention that the next quarter, so the second quarter, they were expecting international visitation headwinds. That's a quote at the domestic parks. As well as upfront costs for launching the Disney Adventure and pre-opening costs for World of Frozen. I note, though, Jim, that right around this time when Disney was prepping for this earnings call, they announced a reduced annual pass holder deposit for Florida residents, basically cutting that deposit in half. So I think this is Disney's practice of using annual pass holders to fill in the gaps in visits from out-of-state and international families. What do you think?
You gotta, honey, I love you again.
Exactly.
The whole notion of, we were just talking at a recent show. In fact, I think over, especially over the Case Forward with Chris Cox about, what was it, Tables in Wonderland, and what a wonderful thing it used to be, and how it would bring annual pass holders into the park just to dine, and how Disney, that went away because it's like, annual pass holders are a pain in the ass. And now it's like, but we still have you. Hey, just a.
Do you remember in the Mickey Mouse cartoon? It's the one about the dog show where Mickey tells Goofy to beg. Goofy's supposed to be a dog in this cartoon, and Goofy starts off with like, "Baby, she meant nothing to me. I still love you. I can change. And every time I hear these sort of annual pass holder discounts, the first thing I think of is Goofy in that particular cartoon.
There we go.
Oh, Lord.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. Some other news. Over in the Magic Kingdom, there's a new construction permit for ferry boat queue expansion. And this is the Magic Kingdom side, not the TTC side. So it looks like they're going to build out a little bit more of the area around the Magic Kingdom ferry dock to allow more guests to fit in. Did you see this?
Yeah, and I think you and I both know what this is about. I mean, long term, with the opening of Piston Peak and Disney Villains Land, what's the estimate? At least 5,000 to 7,000 more people in the Magic Kingdom every day, and at the end of the night, these people have still got to get back to their hotels and their cars. So. I mean, it certainly, from an operations point of view, it makes sense to be doing this work now. I would just love to see something similar going on with the monorail, Yeah,
the monorail's tough to expand. I think we're fixed on capacity there. I don't think Disney's building any new monorails anytime soon. But you did mention Piston Peak, and that brings me to the second news item that we have related to the Magic Kingdom. There were some South Florida Water Management District filings around drainage and plumbing for Villains Land and Cars Land. And Jim, you and I talked about this last week with our friend Jim Scholl.
We did.
Who pointed out, and Jim pointed out that if you draw lines between all of the manhole covers that were shown in that South Florida Water Management District filing, you can see that those are the walking paths around the attractions in Cars Land and Villains Land. So I put in the show notes an overlay that shows where the buildings are. The permits also show the large buildings in there, as well as the walking paths. So you can see kind of where guests are going to go, how they're going to get into Piston Peak, which I think is over by the old Mike Fink Keelboats entrance.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And then get all the way back into Villains Land.
Yeah, I mean, you gotta love the fact that it's sewerage that opened our eyes.
Yeah.
It's like
plumbing is how we know where everything is going, which is true, right? Yeah,
very true. Mm-hmm.
And some really good discussions with some people online over at the WDW Magic forums around things like the building codes that say how far restrooms can be from guests, like how far you can walk until you get to a restroom.
Mm-hmm.
So once we start going through the building codes for the Central Florida Tourism Oversight District, we can start placing those things even more closely. One of the interesting things that Jim Schul pointed out, though, was if you look at in the show notes, there is the northwestmost building in Villains Land looks to be the show building for the Villains coaster that we've talked about. And Jim Schul seems to think that the now tree-lined area to the west of that will be where the coaster goes out and back. But there's still some question about where that coaster track is. I don't think the track is going to go north because there's a canal there.
Mm-hmm.
And Jim Schul points out that you can reroute trees easier than you can reroute canals.
All true. All true.
Plus, if they were going to reroute the canal, there would also be another South Florida Water Management District filing for that, and we've not seen anything like that. So, yeah.
Okay.
So that is super interesting. That's in the show notes as well. All right, a couple of other bits of news. Over in Disneyland, Jim, did you see this? The Anaheim Transportation Network, the bus service, will discontinue that bus service around Disneyland at the end of March.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, that I did not hear about. That's again, especially when you consider, out ahead of the Avatar land that's being added to DCA, that they have to build that brand new parking garage for folks driving up from the south on the 5. Likewise, the new bus station and all that. That's an interesting choice to discontinue bus service. What's that about?
It's a budget thing that the city can't afford it. But the interesting thing is, Disney acknowledged that that's going away and that it's going to affect thousands of guests a day, and they're working with the city to come up with alternate plans. The thing you don't want is for those bus riders to become car drivers.
Oh no.
So it's in everyone's best interest to get that worked out.
Okay, well, here's hoping.
All right, two last bits of news. One, Jim, word around the console is that we might hear more soon from Universal on new domestic theme park attractions. So look for that maybe in the next couple of weeks.
Okay.
And then also, did you catch the Muppet Show last week?
Nancy and I actually caught it last night on ABC, which was, I had no idea that it was going to show up on it was after Abbott Elementary, and suddenly here's an episode of the Muppets, and it's like, woof.
How about that?
What was interesting is they did a preview event for exclusive for D23 members. It then dropped on Disney Plus and then ABC. And look, folks, it's hard not to see that sort of full court press as Disney throwing some love the Muppets' way, that they really do want these characters to come back. Did you watch it though, Len? Or
I did. What'd you think of it?
I thought it was a perfectly good Muppet episode from the 1970s. I don't know, and I know that's lukewarm praise. But that's kind of how I felt. It sort of felt like, okay, this is a very nice show for the 1970s. I still want it to come back, but it's like, wow, okay. What about you?
I thought it was a very good episode. I thought it was a tight 30 minutes, and that it left me wanting more. My only criticism would be, I thought the opening montage was a little maudlin. It was more like nostalgia rather than happy looking forward. But other than that, I thought it was great. I thought Sabrina Carpenter did a great job.
Yep.
The jokes at the beginning when she was with Kermit was fantastic. Her interaction with Miss Piggy was really good. I loved the Islands in the Stream duet.
Yes.
I like that song anyway.
Yep.
Like I sing that song to Laurel a lot.
Mhm.
And I think it's I think it's a funny song. I mean, it's a cute song. But the way that they did it was really good. And then the Stadler and Waldorf jokes pretty much landed. And if you go back and look at Stadler and Waldorf, I mean, they make a lot of comments. Not all of them were as funny as the stuff that we saw in Muppet Vision
Oh, no.
or in the show last night. So whoever wrote for Stadler and Waldorf brought their A game to that. I thought it was really good.
Well, that said, Lynn, the very last Stadler and Waldorf joke where Waldorf is like, "Oh, I have a pain in my left arm. I wonder what's that about." It's like
Yeah.
if you're as old as I am, it's like heart attack. Oh my God, they're
Heart attack.
Yeah. But then the payoff. Well, you certainly didn't hurt yourself applauding. So it's like
Applauding, yeah, that was good, yeah. That, and I like the one that said, your projectiles, sir.
There we go.
The tomatoes.
There we go.
I thought that was really good. Yeah, I mean, I hope they launch, and I hope they do the guest of the week thing, and I hope everyone takes it as seriously as Sabrina did. She did a great job. Her comedic timing is very good, and she can sing, so that was great.
Okay, where this gets interesting is Seth Rogen is the executive producer of this thing, and Seth Rogen, of course, right now is white hot because of the studio, and so it sort of comes down to, does this get picked up largely because Disney wants to be in business with Seth Rogen? So yeah, we still have a couple of weeks now while both ABC and Disney Plus eyeball their schedule for 2026, 2027. So yeah, I think it'll be interesting. Disney's obviously going to eyeball how many people watch this on Disney Plus. Likewise, how many people tuned in to watch it on ABC, and we'll see.
Yeah, I think they couldn't have picked a better person though to launch with Sabrina Carpenter, because I think she appeals to a very wide demographic, and she was also very, very good. So yeah.
True. Mm-hmm.
It's gonna be weird if I ever meet Sabrina Carpenter and I'm gonna lead with, "Oh my God, I loved your duet with Kermit." Like, of all the things you could say.
Well,
what's Miss Piggy like in person? Like, what's that? That's how I would lead.
Okay. Okay.
All right, Jim, on to surveys. Our friend David sent in a Disney annual pass holder survey with some interesting questions on Lightning Lane and after-hours events. The questions are these. And again, remember, this is for annual pass holders. If you were offered the ability to pre-purchase a Lightning Lane multipass 7 days before check-in for $27 per ticket per day, would you do it? Yes or no? And Jim, this is interesting because that's currently the time that you can do it if you're staying on site. And so for annual pass holders, that would be different. The other two questions were this. If you were offered the ability to purchase a ticket to Disney after hours, would you pay $130 per ticket? And if you answer no, the next question is, would you do it for $80?
Ooh.
And originally I was looking at these questions and I said, well, if they're offering an after-hours ticket for $80, that would cannibalize day park tickets. But these are annual pass holders, so that doesn't really come into play. So really it would be, could we get extra people into after hours? Could we get some additional revenue from annual pass holders if we charged $80 per ticket?
Wow.
And that's interesting.
That is. I mean, this is an interesting time at Disney. These two things, coupled with what you shared from the earnings call this week, there's sort of an air of lifting up the couch cushions, to this. It's like, hey, I found another quarter. This is interesting. Wow.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is what it is. It's to fill in the gaps where they can. And you mentioned the earnings stuff. Remember last November, the Disney CFO said that, or he was asked in a forum, basically, what are you guys going to do to increase revenue because there's no big rides opening in 2026? And he said essentially we're going to look at every area we can to increase earnings. And so that would include things like asking annual pass holders if they want to buy things they can't currently buy, right? Or buy them cheaper or whatever.
There we go.
So, so filling in the gaps. I think, this is the CFO equivalent of looking in the couch cushions, yes.
There we go. Okay.
All right, Jim, on to listener questions. Brandon writes in with some self-congratulations. So in January of 2025, more than a year ago, Brandon wrote in and said, With Apple and Disney's long history, Vision Pro surely would be a good place to put a 3D experience like Muppet Vision. Obviously, fans would be frustrated that its paywall would be behind a $3,500 device, but it's the only real place where the actual 3D experience of Muppet Vision could be replicated on a consumer scale. And then we read a fantastic article by our friend Drew Taylor last week at The Wrap that Disney actually did this, saying last year Brian Hansen told us that camera crews had captured the Muppet Vision Theater and the movie with VR cameras to be released at a later date for Apple Vision Pro and other VR headsets. So congratulations are in order for you, Brandon. Good job.
Wow, cool. All right. Nice to know it's preserved like that.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Yeah. Also, Matthew wrote in with a follow-up to our joke about grim grinning roasts last week, with pointing out that Joffrey's Coffee has a themed haunted mansion flavor called Foolish Mocha. So I'd like to apologize to Joffrey's, especially their marketing team. I didn't know that their naming game was so strong. Sorry about that.
Okay. Wow. That's great. Foolish Mocha. All right.
Love it. All right. Michael writes in with a comment about the bus service survey we talked about last week. He said, you and Jim have discussed how it seems that Lightning Lane revenue might be pulling in from dining revenue and isn't net new money to Disney, potentially indicating that guests are at their max vacation budget. They don't need to get rid of bus service, but they could decrease the frequency of buses, especially in the middle of the day when they're used less often by guests. So yeah, that makes sense there. Yeah. And we've seen this before, right? We've seen like in periods of like recession, Disney will consolidate bus service to reduce the number of buses that are running. And they'll do things like run all of the boardwalk resorts on the same bus. So Swan, Dolphin, Yacht, Beach, Boardwalk, all in the same bus route. It takes longer for guests, to get through because each bus stop is, 5 or 6 minutes or whatever. But that's one way they do that. So yeah, we could see something like that too.
No, absolutely. And remember, the interesting thing about bus service as opposed to monorail services, if in fact they see, a super long line of folks at, say, the Magic Kingdom or that sort of thing, it's relatively easy to call over the depot and another bus, put it in right now.
Right. Yeah. They'll have a certain number of buses that'll be flexible like that. Yeah.
There we go.
Also, Jim, Jonathan wrote in with construction photos from inside Epcot before it opened, following up on the series that we just completed. He says, I've really enjoyed the series on Epcot's construction. Here's some photos from a family member who worked there. And also says, I was able to work at Epcot for 4 years from 1999 to 2002, and I loved the park. But it wasn't until years later I discovered this family connection to the construction. So, Jim, I put 10 photos inside Epcot during construction in the show notes. And one of the really interesting things there is there's no pavement poured in any of these photos.
No, there is. In fact, thank you for pointing that out, because if there is one shot, yes, in fact, I'm looking at it now, of the Japan pavilion, and it shows you
right. Okay, that looks like it's either paved or it's really well. It's the soil is really tramped down, ready for paving.
What's interesting is that you can see they've actually paved only half of the promenade around World Showcase Lagoon. Yes. So again, it's sort of the piecemeal approach that we were talking about on last week's show, and but I love these photos. I love, more to the point, when you look at this and you pair that with the stories we shared last week about this place looks dangerous. I mean, this looks like
exactly, yeah.
You are in fact taking your life into your hand. I mean, just that shot of what is it, the Universe of Energy, where you could see the pit where the one utilidor-like structure in Future World is actually being built. That they haven't.
Yeah, that looks like a small canyon, doesn't it?
There, it does. It does.
Like you don't see the bottom of that in that photo.
Many Bothans died. There we go. All right.
Fantastic photos. Thank you for sending them in, Jonathan.
Absolutely.
Along those lines, Nathan writes in with more Epcot construction stories. He says, Jim's story about the endangered woodpecker that caused delays in construction reminded me that the exit road of the Epcot parking lot is named Woodpecker Lane. And sure enough, you go into Google Maps. There it is, right there, and I threw that in the show notes.
Wow. Okay. There's also, in fact, that reminds me that for years, the road that ran, past, the Grand Floridian was called Asian Way, because remember, that's where the Asian Hotel was originally supposed to be built.
Yeah. I think we missed an opportunity to name Epcot Resorts Boulevard Sinkhole Lane, but there's
Yep.
always time.
Okay.
Also, Nathan wrote in to say that he has a social media post from Steve Alcorn, an Imagineer working on electronic systems for Epcot, where Steve posted a scan of a memo from August of 1982, where he was working 16-hour days, 7 days a week. And Steve says, this is what a 112-hour work week looks like. And he posted his timesheet. And Jim, look at the hours that people are working here, like noon to 4 a.m.
By the way, Steve Alcorn has written 2 wonderful books about the construction of Epcot. And if folks want more stories from somebody who is actually on the work site, and again, working ridiculous hours, seek out those 2 books. They're terrific.
Fantastic. All right. Carrie writes in with an observation about which IPs get rides and which IPs get lands. She says, I'm so thankful I ran across the Disney Dish and touring plans. They've been 2 of the key things to support and build my love of Disney parks. In the episode about 3D quietly being removed from the parks, I wanted to talk about the decision to put Pandora in Hollywood Studios. You guys pointed out that Star Wars and Toy Story lands were not in place when that decision was made, and that's true, but Star Tours and Toy Story Mania were in existence. If so, then I think what Michael was saying makes sense. Hollywood Studios didn't have lands to represent those blockbuster movies. They just had rides. Therefore, it wasn't a good fit for the immersive land that they wanted Pandora to be. All right. So, Jim, that's a good point, number 1. But number 2, this kind of put me down a rabbit hole because I wanted to figure out what was the first entire land dedicated to an IP in Disney's domestic parks.
Ooh.
And so do you consider Bear Country, 1972, a dedicated IP land? Because it didn't exist outside the parks. It wasn't a film franchise.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't, and I think Disney learned the hard way that the Bears themselves, though a hit in Florida, weren't a big enough draw in California. I mean, remember they convinced themselves that this was going to be so big they built 2 theaters back to back with that show, and woof.
Right.
Okay.
I mean, the other one could be Mickey's Birthday Land, which was 1988 in the Magic Kingdom, because that's earlier than Camp Mini Mickey. I mean, would you consider the Fab Five to be IP? I mean, yeah, they are IP, right? But they were already in the parks.
They were, and remember the conceit with Mickey's Birthday Land it was a temporary land. In fact, it was only the fact that it did as well as it did that Mickey's Birthday Land, effectively got a reprieve and became Mickey's Starland, and then Mickey's Country Fair, and eventually, what we have today.
So Mickey's Birthday Land might be the right answer if we consider like things that the IP had to live outside of the parks, right? Because the Country Bears didn't. They didn't have like a TV special or anything at the time, right?
You're not wrong.
Jim, the other candidate for this would be, and I think this is going to be the answer to a trivia question one day. In 2002, DCA opened a Bugs Land. And that is definitely an external IP and a land. Is that the first one?
I want to say you are likely correct there, because think about it. They had It's Tough to Be a Bug in Bountiful Valley Farm, and then they sort of extended the land with those 5 flat rides. No, I think you've hit it here. I mean, the irony here is, of course, if the original plan for Muppet Studios had been followed in the 80s, late 80s, early 90s, that would have taken it, completely. Because, again, you had the Muppet Vision, you had the Great Muppet Movie Ride, you had Gonzo's Pandemonium Pizza Parlor. I mean, that was a full land celebrating one IP. But again, that never, when the deal fell apart, it never got built the way the Imagineers had hoped it would be.
And I actually looked at Muppet's Courtyard because I thought, to your point, that was the first one. But it turns out that when Disney MGM Studios opened, it was called New York Street. In fact, Muppet Courtyard didn't get that name until 2016.
No, you're not wrong.
Wow. Great question, Carrie. Fantastic. Thank you for sending that in.
Cool.
All right, folks, we're going to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, Jim tells us how Universal Orlando convinced Disney to build Dinoland USA. We'll be right back.
LifeLock, how can I help? The IRS said I filed my return,
But I haven't.
1 in 4 tax-paying Americans has paid the price of identity fraud.
What do I do?
My refund, though.
I'm freaking out.
Don't worry, I can fix this.
LifeLock fixes identity theft guaranteed and gets your money back with up to $3 million in coverage.
I'm so relieved.
No problem. I'll be with you every step of the way.
1 in 4 was a fraud-paying American. Not anymore. Save up to 40% your first year. Visit LifeLock.com/podcast. Terms apply.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. Stop waiting around for the perfect candidate. Instead, use Indeed sponsored jobs to find the right people with the right skills fast. It's a simple way to make sure your listing is the first candidates see. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs have 4 times more applicants than non-sponsored jobs. So go build your dream team today with Indeed. Get a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
And we're back. All right, Jim, now that Dinosaur, and indeed all of Dinoland USA, is closed at the Animal Kingdom, did you happen to see Universal Orlando's social media post saying, we've got plenty of dinosaurs? I put it in the show notes.
I have to admit, Universal does, chef's kiss, expert level trolling. I mean, that just killed me when I saw that. The
snark is strong.
Yeah. There we go.
Yeah, there we go.
But anyway, we were just talking earlier in today's show, and again, thanks to Brandon for sharing those amazing photos of Epcot construction. But the last 2 weeks we were talking about those last 9 months of construction on Epcot Center in '82, and as Len mentioned, Dinosaur the Ride, and in fact all of Dinoland USA closed this Sunday, February 1st. And, it's also worth noting that, again, if we hang in there for a couple of years, we're going to get our Indiana Jones adventure here in Florida. Now, we want to stress here, not a direct lift of what's out there in Anaheim. In fact, Len went to that conference last year and got all of that amazing information about the pristine Mayan temple that's overgrown with trees and shrubs that Indy's going to find back here. And
I'm going to do it again this year. I mean, Imagineering's presenting again in a couple of weeks, so going to that one too.
Can't wait to hear what you bring out of that one. But what's interesting here, folks, is even now, as the Time Rovers are being rolled out the back door of this 85,000 square foot building, so again, these enhanced motion vehicles can then be transformed into the troop transports that people ride on when they're on the Indiana Jones adventure. I think it's important to talk about how this ride, Dinosaur the Ride, the role it played in the entirety of Disney's Animal Kingdom getting greenlit back in the 90s, which I'm going to remind you folks, that was an incredibly competitive time when it came to the Walt Disney Company and its biggest rival in the theme park space, Universal Studios. Now, on this podcast, we have previously talked at length about the late 1980s when both Universal and Disney were racing to get each of their own movie-based theme parks, not to mention a TV and film production facility built in Central Florida. And Disney won that race. They got MGM open May 1st, '89, whereas Universal didn't get its park operational till June 7th of 1990. But Len, at every turn in the trail, Disney and Universal remained fiercely competitive. So, for example, if Disney built a flume ride, Splash Mountain, opens at Disneyland July of '89, features a 52-foot drop, Universal needs a similar water-based attraction, which is why their theme park out in Florida, June of '96, we see the opening of Jurassic Park The Ride, which, by the way, Len, has an 84-foot drop.
Wow.
And again, same thing with motion-based simulators. Original Star Tours opens at Disneyland in January of '87, with the Walt Disney World version opening December of '89. By the way, Body Wars opens at Epcot a full 2 months before Florida's version of Star Tours, and people forget that, these days, which is kind of appropriate. That's a science and technology park, so, appropriate that new tech debuts there. But anyway, Universal, not to be outdone, debuts its own motion-based simulator in their studio park in Florida, May of 91, with Back to the Future, the ride. Long story short, folks, it's a very competitive time between these two companies, also weirdly personal. So anyway, we jump ahead to the early 90s, and on the heels of the enormous success of Back to the Future, the ride, which sent attendance levels at Universal Studios Florida right through the roof in 91, 92. The folks out in Hollywood decide, okay, time to take the next step. We're going to evolve, what we have down in Florida from a single theme park to a full-blown destination resort with a second gate, on-site hotels, nighttime entertainment district, which is not something that Disney wanted to hear. Dealing with Disney as the operator of a single theme park, that's one thing. But now that they've committed to building a full-blown destination resort, which, by the way, Universal officially announces these plans September of 93, the question now is, well, what's Disney going to do to counteract this? It's worth noting that Disney MGM hadn't even been open 3 months, Len, when Eisner is down in Florida announcing how over the next 3 years, the company would be doubling the size of its studio park. And then just 2 weeks after that, August 28th, 1989, that's when Disney announces its first attempt to acquire the Muppets. But again, Universal, Studios still isn't open yet. It's 10 months till that park opens in June of 1990. But again, you shouldn't feel too bad for the folks at Universal, because in May of 1990, just 1 month before their first theme park in Florida opens, Steven Spielberg convinces the executives up in the Black Tower, that's the building on the lower lot out in Hollywood where all the suits hang out.
It's literally called the Black Tower.
The Black Tower, yes. I love it.
It's giving Death Star a run for its money right there. All right, go ahead.
There we go. But Spielberg convinces the suits to preemptively buy the movie rights to a Michael Crichton book that won't even be published to November of 1990. And that, of course, is Jurassic Park.
Really?
Yep.
So Universal got the rights to Jurassic Park before the book came out?
Yeah, in fact, there's a great story about, Michael Crichton and Steven Spielberg are working together on the pilot of the TV show that would eventually become the long-running NBC series ER. And, and it's literally, they stopped for a coffee break, and they're both, well, what are you working on? Says, well, I got this idea about a theme park.
Book about dinosaurs.
And Spielberg's like, tell me more.
Tell me more. Yeah. Think about how much money Steven Spielberg saved Universal by doing that. Hundreds of millions of dollars.
More to the point, how much money he made for the company. At this point, the Jurassic Park franchise has earned over $6 billion at the worldwide box office.
Wow.
Not to mention launching a slew of theme park attractions. And we're going to get to how one specific attraction, the Jurassic Park River Adventure at Universal's Island Adventure, changed what was going to be built when at Disney's Animal Kingdom. But before we do that, there's this. And we're back, folks. Okay, so Len, before we went to the break, we were talking about Florida's version of Universal's Jurassic Park The Ride. Which, by the way, again, didn't open on the lower lot till June of 96. And again, where this gets interesting is after Universal buys the film rights to Jurassic Park, again, May of 1990, and they give Crichton as publisher $2 million.
$2 million. It's like when people used to say steak cost a nickel.
There we go. But
here you go, kid.
But 1.5 for the actual movie rights, and then an additional $500,000 for Crichton himself to go off and write the first draft. But anyway, as Crichton goes off to work on the script, a galley of the book gets sent to Landmark Entertainment, which at that time, Len, was designing a lot of the ride shows and attractions for Universal. And the folks there were told, read this book and then tell us what theme park rides you could maybe develop based on Jurassic Park's storyline. So folks at Landmark go read Jurassic Park. By the fall of 90, they report back to Universal and say, there's a scene in the book where the T-Rex wades into a river and then swims after Dr. Grant and the kids while they're trying to escape in a rubber raft. And we think that would be a natural jumping off point for a theme park ride. Further weird little bend on the story, Spielberg himself thinks, this scene in the original Jurassic Park book is wonderful. And so for a time, it's a big action set piece in the movie. They get it storyboarded, the script is written. It's at this point, Dennis Murin, who's the head of visual effects at ILM, who handles a lot of the CG for this Universal release, has to break the bad news to Steven. And again, you got to remember, Len, the first Jurassic Park movie doesn't go out into theaters till June of '93, and this is the Stone Age.
Oh, yeah.
When it comes to computer animation. I mean, hell, the first Toy Story movie won't come out for another 2 years and 5 months, November of '95. And so, it's a big enough challenge now just to do full-size dinosaurs with computer animation, but it's like, you want to do water too? Really?
Well, this is the thing, right? So, yeah, I remember this too. Because Pixar will talk about this every once in a while. There are probably people at Pixar and at other, computer-based animation companies. There are probably people who've spent literally their entire career trying to animate things like hair and water.
Yeah.
And the reason for that, like hair, there's just so much of it, right? Number one. But number two, every time you're generating something on a computer screen, you're basically generating shapes like polygons.
Yep.
And there's a lot of computer processing power that goes into figuring out how they overlap, which polygons you can actually see, right, and which are blocked by other shapes and stuff like that. And that's an enormous amount of computing power that they probably just didn't have in 1993.
But at the same time, Brad Bird, the director of The Incredibles and Ratatouille, he talks about this moment where he's working with Pixar and said, "Let me get this straight. You can blow up a building." All right. I could see flames. I could see smoke. That you guys can do. But I'm asking you now to have a character reach out to another character and grab their shirt. And, and it's one of these things where no,
impossible. Can't be done.
Exactly. It was such a weird time in computer animation. But anyway, Dennis Murin literally has to tell Spielberg, "I'm sorry, we can do the dinosaur, we can't do the swimming dinosaur." But on the other hand, if this Jurassic Park movie does what we think it's going to do, just hang on to that scene. We'll do it in one of the sequels. And sure enough, just this past summer, Len, in Jurassic World Rebirth, one of the highlights of that film is a scene where a sleeping T-Rex, sees a family trying to escape in a rubber life raft and wades into a river and swims after them. So, all these years later, 6 films into the series, they finally did it.
Yeah, these things take time. He probably animated it on his iPhone too, right? Because that's how computing power goes.
You are not wrong. So, all right. Anyway, back out to Landmark going to Universal, and even with the scene cut out of the movie, they're like, "Look, you guys have asked us to come up with an answer to Disney's Splash Mountain. This scene from the movie, from the original book, is it. Let us build this." So sure enough, January of 1995, they break ground at a 5-acre site in the lower lot. Universal gives them $67 million to build it, but in the fine Disney tradition of, Splash Mountain went, double over its budget. Same thing with Jurassic Park: The Ride. Originally budgeted at 57, finally closed at 110 million.
I like to think the original estimate, Jim, is just a down payment. To deposit, if you will.
There we go. People at themed entertainment love that attitude, Len. All right. So opens June of 96. Attendance levels at the park go through the roof. And this is something that Disney hears about. Now, we have to talk now about a thing that, to be honest, people in themed entertainment don't like to talk about. In that, Len, this is a very small community. It's a very specialized field. These people who design and make theme parks, and you can make people sign all of the NDAs in the world you want, but they are still going to talk. People love to gossip.
What? You're saying, Jim, that there are people who have signed NDAs who will gossip about the things they're working on?
I am shocked.
I am shocked to find rumors circulating in this establishment.
There we go. Thank you, Captain Renault. All right. Anyway, so this is why Disney knew as far back as the winter of 1990, 1991, that Landmark was developing a Jurassic Park ride for Universal, and that it was going to be based around this T-Rex swimming after the rubber raft scene, and they also knew that, okay, so this is how they're going after Splash Mountain. So what does Disney do? Mm-hmm. Well, again, it's the early 90s. Design work is already well underway on the Indiana Jones adventure. Disneyland will break ground on this ambitious attraction in August of 93. It'll open to the park in March of 95. But here's the thing. The Imagineers have spent years and tens of millions of dollars on inventing the enhanced motion vehicle ride system. And the company, after putting all of this time and going to all of this expense, they don't want Indiana Jones to be a one-off. They want this very expensive ride system to be used elsewhere in the Disney parks. And at this time, there's a fourth theme park in development for Florida. In fact, as early as the fall of '89, when Eisner learned that the parking lot at MGM would open at 7 o'clock and then have to close at 7:30 because the park was at capacity. So it's like, it's at that point that Eisner reportedly says, okay, we got to get a fourth park in Florida. Joe Rohde winds up writing Herd on the project, and he convinces Disney management that this should be about animals, specifically real animals found in today's world, mythical beasts, and then dinosaurs. And by the way, Len, that was the original batting order. What was originally known as Disney's Wild Animal Kingdom, first and foremost, celebrate real animals from Asia and Africa. Elephants, lions, tigers, lowland gorillas. Next part of the park, acknowledging Disney's mastery when it came to the field of fantasy. Was supposed to be loaded up with unicorns and fire-breathing dragons, not to mention, an occasional cameo appearance by the Loch Ness Monster, who would, rise up out of Discovery River, the waterway that circled the Tree of Life. And then finally, part 3 was dinosaurs in a yet-to-be-determined way. And again, this is where it gets interesting. Remember, Universal is going to announce its plans for an ambitious destination resort in Florida, which is going to include a second gate. That announcement's going to happen in September of 93. And because everyone who works in themed entertainment talks.
I'm still shocked by that, Jim.
There we go. Everybody knew that Islands of Adventure was going to include an entire land themed around Jurassic Park, especially given that this was right after, the original Jurassic Park movie had come out in the summer of 93 and made damn near $1 billion. So here's Disney. Disney knows this is coming, and they're trying to sort of settle the financials for Animal Kingdom to make this park viable. And so this then brings us to this point that there's got to be a change in the batting order at Disney's Wild Animal Kingdom. The park will open with only one land of real animals available to guests. Remember, it opened with Africa, and we didn't really get Asia till the following year.
Following year, yeah.
And then it brings us to Beastly Kingdom in Dino Land USA, which now swap places in the batting order. The determination now is that the dinosaur-themed area will be there for phase 1, whereas the area that celebrates mythical beasts is now going to get pushed back to phase 2.
Really? This is why we didn't get Beastly Kingdom, because of Dino Land USA and Jurassic Park?
Yes, and in fact, and then the kicker,
Holy cow.
because they had the enhanced motion vehicle system already designed for Indiana Jones Adventure at Disneyland, which again, by the way, still won't open till March of '95. This is now something that's being looked at as like, okay, can we use that same ride system and celebrate dinosaurs? All right. By taking this approach, Len, this would allow Disney, which would be opening Animal Kingdom down in Florida, April of '98, a full year and 6 months ahead of Universal's Islands Adventure, which would open late May of '99, to get the jump on Florida's version of Jurassic Park, the ride, with their own dinosaur-themed ride, Countdown to Extinction.
Wow. So really, we didn't get Beastly Kingdom because Disney wanted to prioritize dinosaurs to compete with Jurassic Park over at the upcoming Islands of Adventure. Wow. How about that?
Well,
okay.
you know, I mean, but that's the thing. This is how crazy competitive Universal and Disney were, and let's be honest, still are, Len. I mean, if we're being completely honest, do you think we would have gotten a Star Wars Galaxy's Edge if it hadn't been for Harry Potter doing as well as it did when it debuted at Universal Islands Adventure back in June of 2010? I mean, Disney looked at that and looked at the sales of butterbeer and like, all right, blue milk. You think they'll go for blue milk? Let's get working on that.
Exactly. LeFou's Brew. Let's try that first. Yeah. All right.
But anyway, again, this, by taking this approach, it allowed Disney to get a jump by a full year, to be the park that had dinosaurs out ahead of, out ahead of Universal Islands Adventure. And, again, just it reminds me of that wonderful lyric from the song from Hamilton, the room where it happened, where nobody really knows how the game is played, the art of the trade, how the sausage is made. This is literally what happened. That this is why, and again, we've just seen Dinosaur close. We're about to see Indy come in, and it's all on the back of a Disney company back in the 90s that's like, this will give us an edge over islands, people who, people won't be leaving Walt Disney World to go see dinosaurs. We'll have dinosaurs. I don't know. I just wanted to share this story as, Dinosaur the Ride disappears and we finally get our Indy ride for Florida. Which, not to put too fine a point on it, that was the whole point back in '95. It's like, we've spent all this money on the enhanced motion vehicle ride system. We really want to find a way to put this into the parks. How are we going to do that? So there we go.
It's super interesting. And I love the fact that you can look at today, with Disney looking at Epic Universe and the stuff in Nintendo, and saying, oh, we have to... Because remember, we didn't hear about Piston Peak or Villain's Land until we knew about Epic Universe.
Absolutely. And but on the other hand, the upside is, as folks who go to Central Florida and visit all the parks, we're the ones who benefit. We get to see just the island of Berg in Epic, I think. It is worth the price of admission there. And more to the point, I love to see a Disney looking at that sort of thing and saying, we got to step up our game with Piston Peak. We got to step up our game with Villain's Land. So going to be interesting to see what Mr. Tomorrow, come to, what is it, 2031? Is that what we're hearing?
We should have almost everything opened by 2030. So I'm expecting by 2028-ish. we're going to start hearing whatever the phase 2 projects are to spend the remainder of that $60 billion.
Okay. But anyway, that's how we wound up with Dinosaur and Animal Kingdom. That was, that was the engine that drove that decision.
That's fascinating. I didn't know that. All right, good show.
Cool.
All right, folks, that's going to do it for the show today. You can help support our show by subscribing over at patreon.com/JimHillMedia, where we're posting exclusive shows every week. Our latest show is a live walkthrough the modern Epcot with me, Jim, and Jim Scholl, and there's a link in the show notes. And speaking of Jim Scholl, on the next Disney Journey, veteran Imagineer Jim Scholl shares his thoughts about the recent management change at Walt Disney Company and the future challenges that Josh D'Amaro and Dana Walden are going to face. On next week's show, Jim gives us the history of the Great Movie Ride. We're very excited for that. You can find more of Jim at jimhillmedia.com and more of me, Len at terrainplans.com. And speaking of Chris Cox, check out The Case For with Chris Cox, which is a podcast where Chris, Jim, and I debate one theme park topic at a time, and you get to vote on who's right. We're produced spectacularly by Eric Hersey and David Gray, who'll be showing off cultivars including the Black Baccarat and the Rainbow Rose at the 104th Annual Thomasville Rose Show, running April 24th and 25th on Remington Avenue at Broad Street in beautiful downtown Thomasville, Georgia. While Eric and David are doing that, please go into iTunes and rate our show and tell us what you'd like to hear next. For Jim, this is Len. We will see you on the next show.
Thank you.